So welcome everyone who's already connected to this session of Gobeshona conference, organized by WFP, organized from the WFP region in Latin America. So this is why we're connected so late. Thanks everyone at Gobeshona conference for making that possible. Today we want to present on the topic of climate services and how climate services capacity strengthening at different levels in countries within Latin America is leading towards locally led adaptation. So from rain gauges to probabilistic forecasts, we will look at different levels, at different forms of capacity strengthening with my dear colleagues. So welcome everyone who's connected so far, and let's look at who's participating today. So I will facilitate the session. My colleague Krishna Krishnamurthy will, he's the Climate Services and Anticipatory Action Regional Coordinator. He will give us an introduction into the topic, and then three colleagues from the region, Javier Leon from WFP Colombia, Tara Gomez from WFP Dominican Republic, and Jorge Barrientos from WFP Guatemala will give insights into the work on the ground with communities and institutions to strengthen capacities in the region on climate services so that countries can locally adapt to the changing climate and climate variability. So I invite Krishna to come on stage, so to say, and to give us a first insight on the topic. Thanks a lot.
Thanks Nadine, and welcome everyone. Thanks for joining so late. For those of you who are joining in other time zones. So I'll try to be brief because I think the more interesting interventions will be from our colleagues in country. As Nadine mentioned, I'm based in the Regional Bureau for Latin America and the Caribbean, so based in Panama, and supporting the work on anticipatory action and climate services. And in WFP, we really see climate services as one of the key components of locally led adaptation. Next, please, Nadine.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. So why climate services, and why do we think that climate services are such an important part of the climate crisis and the solution to the climate crisis, rather? Well, as we all know, this is not necessarily new to anyone, but the magnitude of extreme weather events such as droughts, floods, and tropical storms is increasing. And the impacts on the most food insecure populations is becoming overwhelming. Now, just to illustrate, for example, that we were just coming out of an unprecedented 3 years of La Nina cycles. This has never happened on recorded history, and the impacts on rainfall distribution and things like that are significant on the most vulnerable communities. Another example is that in the last 10 years, we've seen a consistent decrease in rainfall overall in Central America, and especially in the so-called dry corridor, which is where the most food insecure and communities that depend on climate, on reliable climate live. So against this background, there's a real need for enhancing access to information. And now, rainfed farmers who dominate the subsistence agriculture landscape in Latin America and the Caribbean depend on seasonality, as I just mentioned. They need to know when it's going to rain, how reliable the rainfall will be, what the length of the season will be, so that they can make decisions about which crops to plant. So this information is really key, and communities also need to know when specific events will take place, and also what the future climate change will look like, so that they can then decide whether a specific livelihood is still feasible or not. So climate services play a huge role here. It's so we talked about information, but it's not just information. It's not just about ensuring that communities have access to information. And that is one key component, but it's not the whole story. We need to make sure that the information is actionable and that it is useful for the end user. And so here there's a real need for strong collaboration between providers as well as users of climate information. So what this means is that we're not only talking about making sure that the climate bulletin is reaching a smallholder farmer, but it's also ensuring that that information is meaningful. And here I'd like to give a small anecdote of a climate services project that was implemented in Mali, completely different context, but I think it helps illustrate why engagement with communities and end users is important. So there was a donor who I won't name who invested a lot of money in early warning information and dissemination in Mali. And so there was a huge investment, $100 million or more, in just making sure that communities participate in trainings on how to interpret climate forecasts and rainfall forecasts. And overall, the project seemed to be a success until an evaluation was made. And the evaluators went to communities and they asked the participants if they had received the bulletins over the last years or so. And they all said consistently yes. And they were asked if they participated in the trainings to understand whether they could interpret the climate information. And again, the answer was yes. And eventually, the evaluators asked communities what they used with the bulletins, what they did with the bulletins. And invariably, all of the community members said they used the paper bulletins to cover the crops to protect them from extreme heat. And so when the evaluators also asked how communities are interpreting climate information, how do they make decisions on when to plant and what types of crops to plant, they indicated traditional indicators. So they pointed towards a coconut tree, and they said when the first coconut falls, that's when they know it's time to plant. And so armed with that information, the project took a completely different shape. And instead of providing things like probability of rainfall anomalies over X%, they started saying, look, the coconut tree is going to fall in the next 2 weeks. Start preparing for planting. And so this is the key here. We need to make sure that information is actionable. And sorry, I hear some audio.
Yeah,
okay.
I think someone has the mic open. So
okay.
I'm so sorry.
No worries, no
problem.
worries. Yeah, and so yeah, just to conclude on this slide, the story is that we really need to make sure that climate information is not just distributed, but it's translated into a useful language for the end user. And ultimately, this will be a key component for locally led adaptation. Next slide, please, Nadine. Yeah, very, very briefly on the WFP approach to climate services. So for us, it's really about the last mile early warning. That's where we see a potential contribution for our work. And what we mean is really targeting the communities that are usually marginalized and who don't have access to climate information. The majority of our work focuses on helping rural communities and help them access tailored weather and climate information so that they can ultimately understand climate information and use it to make decisions. And in the next few presentations, we'll hear some examples that look at bioindicators in the case of Colombia, and how we can also work with the weather agencies and communities to anticipate climate hazards in both the Dominican Republic and Guatemala. So as I mentioned, a lot of our work involves a strong collaboration with national meteorological agencies. On the one hand, to improve weather forecasts, but also to improve the quality of the bulletins so that they're useful for communities. And for this, we also have close engagement with end users, primarily smallholder farmers, so that we can understand their climate information needs. And we also have quite a strong engagement with communication and design experts so that we can ensure that all of this information is trickling down in the right format, whether it's radio, paper formats, and so on, just so that communities can get the information they need in the right format. And just as a As an aside, we are already supporting more than 5 million people globally through tailored climate information, and this is expected to increase over the next few years. This is a bit of a busy slide, so don't worry too much about it. I'll just quickly talk about some of the details, but in brief, it's essentially a summary of where we are already doing climate services activities. And the type of climate services, of course, vary from country to country because, as we've discussed, they really need to be tailored to the end user. But what you'll see is that we're basically working everywhere from Cuba down to Bolivia on climate services projects. And this is already slightly outdated. But in brief, it's already a big thrust of our approach to locally led adaptation. Next slide, please, Nadine. Yeah, so just to conclude, building on that map, we're going to present 3 case studies, which are probably much more interesting than my presentation. So on Colombia, we're going to look at how WFP is engaging with indigenous and Afro-descendant populations to select bioindicators that can then inform their adaptation measures. In the Dominican Republic, I think I briefly alluded to this before, we're looking at early warning systems and community resilience and anticipatory action, and how all of these issues are linked. And finally, in Guatemala, we are also going to look at an example of community climate informants, or we call them guardianes del clima, who enhance the delivery of actionable climate information through different data capture tools. So, yeah, over to you, Nadine.
Thanks a lot, Krishna. If there are any questions from participants just on this presentation, please put them in the chat or let us know that we can unmute you, and you can also ask them directly. Otherwise, so we will have this possibility to ask questions directly concerned on the presentation after each presentation, and at the end we plan to have a bit of a discussion Q&A, so there's also time at the end. Okay, thanks a lot. So let's then go to the first presentation from a country office, Colombia. My colleague Javier will speak in Spanish, so I invite you all to put those who don't speak Spanish or don't feel that comfortable in Spanish to select interpreter modus below in your Zoom panel. It's a little earth or globe symbol, and there you can select English, and then you should hear our lovely interpreters translating the content. So I hope that's working for all of you. And then over to Javier. Javier, a ti.
Vale, muchas gracias. Muy buenos días o muy buenas noches para las personas que nos están escuchando. Mi nombre es Javier León. Estamos trabajando con el Programa Mundial de Alimentos en 2 de los países que están en Sudamérica, entre Colombia y Ecuador, y nos enfocamos con un proyecto financiado por el Fondo de Adaptación del Protocolo de Kioto. Quisiéramos hablarles de todo lo que hemos realizado con nuestras comunidades indígenas y campesinas que se ubican en este corredor binacional de unas cuencas que están en estos territorios entre Ecuador y Colombia. En el 2018 iniciamos reconociendo a las comunidades indígenas y afrodescendientes sobre el rol que tienen tanto los hombres y las mujeres con respecto al clima y con respecto a su seguridad alimentaria y con respecto también a cómo ellos manejan el pronóstico del clima, teniendo en cuenta, digamos, que la sobrevivencia y la forma de vivir de estas comunidades, tanto indígenas y afrodescendientes, dependen mucho de las condiciones ambientales y las condiciones atmosféricas o las condiciones climáticas. Creeríamos que lo primero que teníamos que hacer era definir si en estos lugares donde están estas comunidades asentadas, viviendo, realmente están con cambio climático, están sufriendo de variabilidad climática, cuáles son las proyecciones climáticas que tienen las comunidades y de alguna manera empezar a trabajar los pronósticos climáticos. Estas comunidades, al tener unas lenguas propias, se les dificulta, digamos, para el entendimiento científico versus un entendimiento local, al igual que nosotros. Se nos dificultaba entender cómo ellos podían interpretar el cambio climático, la variabilidad climática dentro de su forma de existencia y cómo ellos podían comunicarnos y expresarnos de manera directa cómo lo han vivido. Entonces empezamos con una propuesta de fortalecer a esas comunidades, primero que todo, digamos, entender qué hacen para enfrentarse frente al cambio climático, cómo integrar el cambio climático en sus actividades diarias, en sus actividades de alimentos, de siembra, de cosecha y generar, digamos, un conocimiento de sus calendarios, de ese calendario climático. Entonces, con esas organizaciones que son indígenas y afrodescendientes, pudimos lograr entender, digamos, algunos principios culturales y empezar también a transmitir nuestro conocimiento científico frente a los fenómenos climáticos. Ustedes están viendo allí, a mano izquierda, los diferentes procesos que ellos tienen durante todo el mes, teniendo en cuenta las fases lunares, teniendo en cuenta el día y identificar algunos animales que están, digamos, disponibles en ciertas épocas del año. Entonces ellos pueden realizar la caza, la siembra, la cosecha, el hecho de compartir sus alimentos con las otras comunidades y tratar de vivir en un ambiente favorable, ¿sí? Nosotros, ahí cuando están viendo la fotografía con ese equipo que está allí, un pluviómetro, tratamos también de darles a conocer cómo podemos recolectar información local, ¿sí? Durante los diferentes meses en cuanto a precipitación, recurso hídrico, temperatura, ¿sí? Para que ellos también puedan interpretar, digamos, tanto lo que ellos mencionaban, los fenómenos naturales, versus los fenómenos ya registrados en algunas herramientas. Hagamos la siguiente lámina, por favor. Bien. Entonces, lo que nosotros hemos visto para, digamos, para todas las comunidades es que muchas de ellas se dificultan de tener una información de interpretación sobre el clima, ¿sí? Casi más de la mitad de los países del mundo no disponen de información climática temprana para tomar decisiones. En este caso, nosotros, las comunidades indígenas y afrodescendientes, tampoco tienen condiciones supremamente complejas para poder conocer cómo es el comportamiento del clima y cómo poder generar unas alertas o cómo generar unos servicios climáticos que le aporten a ellos a su sobrevivencia. Estamos hablando de que la cobertura, cuando hablamos de alertas o de servicios climáticos, no llega a todas las personas. Se habla, digamos, de que 1 de cada 3 personas en el mundo sigue sin estar cubierta por servicios de alerta temprana climática y posiblemente pueden ser más. En este caso, para nuestro trabajo que estamos desarrollando con comunidades, estamos viendo que es 0. O sea, ninguna de las comunidades tiene acceso a servicios climáticos o conocimientos de plataformas o conocimientos de que el gobierno, ¿sí?, pueda darles alguna información de qué es lo que está pasando con respecto al clima. Entonces nosotros estamos revisando a nivel mundial cómo son las escalas de análisis cuando se requiere de que esta información climática llegue al usuario final, sobre todo a las comunidades que son más lejanas. Y eso lo que miramos es que esta información generalmente se hace a nivel global a nivel nacional o incluso puede llegar a una escala regional, a una información de análisis climática regional, más no a una escala local, a una escala uno a uno, a una escala donde el participante o el beneficiario sepa realmente qué es lo que está pasando en el territorio. Entonces eso genera mucha incertidumbre para todos, principalmente para las personas, para conocer si donde está viviendo, donde está haciendo sus diferentes actividades, pueda sobrevivir. Hablamos, digamos, de que servicios climáticos en todo el mundo, hay muchas inversiones para poder hacer diseminación de información, hacemos observaciones con diferentes instrumentación, estamos conociendo un poco más de lo que son los desastres, pero en preparación y respuesta casi en la mayoría de veces los recursos económicos es muy escasa. No sabemos si los recursos que vienen con proyección futura van a alcanzar para poder responder a a nuestras comunidades. Entonces, con respecto a los servicios climáticos, lo que nosotros estamos tratando de elaborar es una herramienta que permita interpretar el conocimiento tradicional por medio de unos bioindicadores versus una información científica que estamos tratando también de recolectar con las mismas comunidades para poder hacer esa interpretación o una correlación. Para nosotros, esa información se convierte, digamos, como en la base principal para que las comunidades reconozcan lo que está pasando con el clima y reconozcan qué hacer frente a esos fenómenos climáticos. Siguiente. Bueno, entonces estamos en la fase de creación de una plataforma denominada CliMap, que es clima y mapeo de lo que esté sucediendo en el territorio con respecto a lo referente al cambio climático. Entonces, con esta herramienta, la idea es que las comunidades se vuelvan más resilientes frente al cambio climático. Siguiente. Estamos haciendo el ejercicio para que se relacione, digamos, cómo tomar decisiones acerca de mis cultivos, acerca de los principales alimentos donde ellos están produciendo, ¿sí? A una escala, pues, digamos, muy local. Y cómo se relaciona lo que yo estoy pensando como indígena o como afrodescendiente con relación al clima, ¿sí? Ellos tienen muchas interpretaciones locales y saben cómo manejar. Por ejemplo, tenemos algunos bioindicadores que los han desarrollado durante muchos años. Es cuando la aparición de cierto tipo de arañas. Entonces ellos mencionan que se puede relacionar esa aparición de esas arañas con el tiempo de preparación del suelo, ¿sí? Preparación de siembra. Algunos animales que hacen muchos desplazamientos en los territorios ya aparecen en unas épocas y desaparecen en otras épocas. Entonces, ellos mencionan que esos animales, cuando aparecen esos aves, permiten conocer que son unas anticipaciones para el...
Hello.
Yes, I lost connection to Javier. Let's see if he comes back in a few seconds.
Suddenly we don't hear from you, so I think that whether there is any disturbance or not, that's why.
Yeah, no, it seems like Javier lost
Okay.
connection.
Okay.
Let me check with him what
Mhm.
happened. Let's see if you go back. Otherwise, we switch to presentation, the next presentation, and then come back to his in a bit. But I see him
Hola.
online. Yeah. Hola, Javier,
Hola,
perdón.
qué pena.
Te
Nos
perdimos. Ok,
desconectamos
de nuevo.
por acá.
Ya,
Ujú.
no hay problema. Gracias.
Gracias. Bien, entonces lo que nosotros tratamos, digamos, de trabajar y agilizar con nuestras comunidades indígenas y afrodescendientes y que eso se puede replicar a diferentes comunidades es entregar algunas herramientas muy básicas como calendarios climáticos donde ellos van a tomar registros de qué es lo que está pasando el día de hoy y relacionarlo con el clima, ¿sí? Con temperatura, con precipitación. Entonces hemos entregado algunos pluviómetros y termómetros para que la gente empiece a tomar a las 7 de la mañana esos registros todos los días. Entonces, por un lado, capacitar a ese grupo de personas que se convierten en vigías del clima, toman registros diarios a las 7 de la mañana de temperatura, precipitación. A su alrededor van a encontrar muchos bioindicadores que son a nivel diario, a nivel semanal o mensual, y que puedan relacionarlos con la cantidad de agua o la lluvia o la sequía versus algunos fenómenos incluso. Y eso permite como mirar cómo se integran y tomar decisiones. Entonces hemos empezado a crear esa plataforma donde vamos a generar los bioindicadores climáticos relacionados con la información local. Y también estamos haciendo esa interpretación para poder hacer proyecciones climáticas y esta información de bioindicadores la podemos validar. Siguiente lámina, por favor. Entonces, esta es la plataforma que hemos creado, se llama ClimApp, donde podemos registrar puntualmente dónde están ubicadas. Aquí estamos ubicados en el departamento de Nariño, Colombia y Ecuador. Tenemos unas estaciones que son muy básicas, como les mencioné, de pluviómetros y termómetros entregadas a las diferentes familias. Esas familias registran la información. Nosotros ya tenemos el horizonte de cómo es el comportamiento del clima en ese lugar, y a medida que ellos nos dan la información, les genera una alerta, un pronóstico específico en ese lugar, localizado. Entonces podemos saber si están en una fase de vulnerabilidad, ¿sí? Por las altas precipitaciones o por las bajas precipitaciones, o si están en una alta vulnerabilidad por los temas de sequías o altas oleadas de calor. Esta plataforma ustedes la pueden revisar allí, ahí está el enlace. Lo que permite es que a tiempo real las comunidades en una tablet o en su celular o por un mensaje de texto nos envían la información.
¿Ahí me siguen escuchando?
Yes, sí.
Sí, un poco. Sí.
Ok.
Se fue por acá. Entonces, lo que hacen es suministrar toda la información del día a día. Nosotros la vamos cargando en esta plataforma. Esta plataforma, con ese perfil que tenemos nosotros de alta temperatura, baja temperatura o precipitaciones, de 30 años atrás tenemos al menos una información muy específica de cómo debe ser, cómo está, digamos, el clima en esos lugares. Y al tomar esa información, podemos generar, digamos, una alerta temprana en el territorio para que ellos tomen decisiones. Estamos tratando de integrar también información sobre inundaciones, incendios, sí, que sean localizados por los fenómenos que también pueden ser específicos en esos lugares. Y adicional, pues ellos están compartiendo información de los bioindicadores. Al integrar el cambio climático, integrar la información climática diaria con los bioindicadores, podemos nosotros constatar que esa información que proviene de comunidades pueda ser utilizada en otros territorios también con la misma interpretación. Si aparecen arañas, si aparecen aves, si aparecen, nosotros le decimos moscardones, libélulas, abundancia de peces, hormigas. Eso les permite hacer esa interpretación en cualquier parte del mundo, teniendo en cuenta que podemos hacer esa validación de estos bioindicadores. Entonces, esta plataforma está en construcción. La idea es
Ahora no te escuchamos más. Es raro, te veo,
¿Y
pero
ya?
no te escucho. Ya, ahora sí.
Ahora sí. Vale. Sí, entonces por esa parte, pues sí.
preguntas, pues estamos aquí pendientes. Y gracias.
Thanks a lot, Javier. Super interesting project, I think. Not sure if participants want to ask direct questions concerned to this. Otherwise, we continue with the next presentation. I'll take a look at the chat, of course. No, so far I can't see anything. Okay, so if there are no direct questions, we go to Dominican Republic, and if participants think of a question later on, we can also discuss it at the end. Okay, thanks a lot, Javier. So, coming to the next presentation, Dominican Republic. Tara, are you there? Tara, ¿estás? Perdón.
Sí, estoy aquí.
Perfecto.
¿Me escuchan bien? Okay.
Sí, te escucho perfecto. Gracias.
Perfecto.
Adelante.
Bueno, muchas gracias. Gracias por la invitación a participar en esta conferencia donde vamos a poder conversar sobre el trabajo que ha venido realizando el Programa Mundial de Alimentos aquí en República Dominicana en cuanto a los servicios climáticos, tanto a nivel nacional como a nivel comunitario, que es un poco el trabajo en el que nos queremos centrar ahora mismo, ¿no? Más yendo o estableciendo estos servicios climáticos y mejorándolos a nivel comunitario. Nadine, si me puedes ayudar pasando a la siguiente hoja, por favor. Voy a hacer como una pequeña contextualización sobre República Dominicana. Bueno, según el índice de riesgos climáticos globales, es un país o es uno de los países más vulnerables frente al cambio climático, ya que sufrimos el impacto de huracanes, inundaciones y sequías de manera recurrente. Y esto sobre todo afecta a la población más vulnerable y a sus medios de vida. Según la Defensa Civil Dominicana, se estima que aproximadamente un 68% del territorio es propenso a sufrir corrimientos de tierra, inundaciones y que unas 38.000 personas cada año tienen que abandonar sus casas debido a las inundaciones y a los daños sufridos en sus viviendas. Las inundaciones son la amenaza meteorológica más recurrente y sobre todo en la región noreste es la zona de mayor riesgo. Y bueno, en la última década el país se ha visto gravemente afectado por sequías más recurrentes e intensas en los últimos años. Según las proyecciones climáticas, bueno, se muestra un aumento de la ocurrencia de los fenómenos hidrometeorológicos extremos en comparación con lo ocurrido en las últimas décadas, y se estima que las precipitaciones anuales para el 2050 disminuyan un 5% de media en general en el territorio nacional. Ahora, bueno, realmente nosotros vamos a centrarnos más o voy a centrarme más en conversarles sobre la cuenca Yaque del Norte, ya que es la cuenca hidrográfica más importante de República Dominicana y es una de las zonas donde el Programa Mundial de Alimentos trabaja en República Dominicana. El río Yaque del Norte es el más largo del país, con casi 300 kilómetros, y está compuesto de varios afluentes y sistemas de presas con las que se abastece de agua a casi 2 millones de personas. Esta cuenca también ayuda a abastecer de agua los sistemas de regadío de más de 70.000 hectáreas de banano y arroz. El impacto climático y los efectos meteorológicos son más graves en las comunidades alrededor de esta cuenca debido a varias razones. La principal es por la proximidad de los asentamientos comunitarios cercanas al río. Esto hace que bueno, se vuelvan como más vulnerables ante las inundaciones. Se estima también que las provincias de Montecristi y Valverde tienen el nivel de pobreza más alto de la media nacional y bueno, la mayoría de estos hogares o de los hogares de estas comunidades se dedican a la pequeña agricultura y a la pesca. Esta suele ser pues su fuente de alimentación y medio de vida. Y también comentarles que esta región es árida en su mayor parte y que muchas de las comunidades dependen del agua del río para, como les decía antes, para el tema del riego y otras necesidades básicas. Y bueno, en este caso, las mujeres, niños, niñas, adolescentes, personas adultas mayores y la población migrante suelen ser las personas que sufren mayor situación de vulnerabilidad ante estos impactos y pues bueno, suele ser pues a consecuencia del limitado acceso a la información climática y a las medidas de prevención, ¿no? O sea, el hecho de que todavía hay mucho trabajo para hacer en cuanto a las medidas de prevención a nivel comunitario. Nadine, si puedes, por favor, pasar a la siguiente hoja. Bueno, hasta el momento el gobierno dominicano pues, ha hecho esfuerzos para mejorar la tecnología de la previsión e información a través del Instituto Nacional de Recursos Hidráulicos, el INDRI en sus siglas, y la Oficina Nacional de Meteorología, que es ONAMET, las siglas son ONAMET, para prevenir y reducir los daños que causan los fenómenos meteorológicos en República Dominicana. El problema es que el sistema de la recopilación y gestión de datos meteorológicos es todavía insuficiente para lograr la precisión necesaria y poder obtener una alerta temprana. Además, debemos de seguir trabajando en la capacitación técnica de los equipos de estas instituciones. Y bueno, lo que tenemos claro es que para poder garantizar una alerta temprana localizada y poder realizar acciones anticipadas es fundamental el trabajar en las necesidades de desarrollo de capacidades sobre la información climática, tanto a nivel provincial como municipal. O sea, no solamente centrarnos a nivel nacional, sino como ir aterrizando a nivel local. Si puedes pasar a la siguiente. Entonces, bueno, comentarles un poco el trabajo que ha venido realizando en los últimos años el Programa Mundial de Alimentos. Desde el 2015 se ha estado trabajando junto al gobierno para fortalecer los sistemas de alerta temprana, definiendo unos umbrales y detonantes de las inundaciones y sequías y vincularlos a los SOPs para acciones anticipadas a nivel nacional y sobre todo comunitario. Todo esto se ha trabajado de lleno a través del proyecto llamado Financiación Basada en Pronósticos, o sus siglas en inglés serían FBF, que bueno, se ha estado desarrollando en algunas de las comunidades de la cuenca del río Yaque del Norte, sobre todo en la provincia de Montecristi. En el año 2020, a través de este mecanismo, a través de este proyecto, se pudo poner a prueba con un evento en tiempo real en las comunidades aledañas a la cuenca del río del Yaque del Norte, y esto hizo que las instituciones hidrometeorológicas del gobierno pudieran utilizar este modelo a través de este proyecto, esta simulación, para identificar los niveles de riesgo de acuerdo con el evento que se produjo y se pudieran publicar los reportes para la toma oportuna de decisiones. En este momento, o sea, en este caso, el Programa Mundial de Alimentos activó sus procedimientos operativos para responder a través de transferencias de asistencia en efectivo mediante Western Union a los hogares que estaban en mayor situación de vulnerabilidad frente a estas inundaciones como forma de realizar acciones anticipadas. Este ejercicio la verdad es que resultó muy útil para poner a prueba estas herramientas disponibles y para precisar los umbrales e identificar aquellas áreas que sufrían mayor riesgo para mejorar en futuras activaciones. Después de este trabajo, se ha desarrollado una plataforma digital de seguimiento de una sequía y se ha trabajado con las autoridades locales y actores clave a nivel comunitario para concienciar sobre la alerta temprana y las acciones anticipadas. Y se ha llevado a cabo un diagnóstico de las estaciones meteorológicas. Este diagnóstico de observación y medición de variables hidrometeorológicas dentro de la cuenca ayuda a identificar los componentes a mejorar, sobre todo por parte de la Oficina Meteorológica Nacional, y para que ellos puedan llevar a cabo una vigilancia hidrometeorológica adecuada. También comentarles que en el 2022, o sea, el año pasado, se pudo volver a activar este proyecto, bueno, esta herramienta de FBF, a raíz de las lluvias causadas por el huracán Fiona. Y bueno, al finalizar la presentación vamos a poder ver un video corto donde resume el trabajo que se ha estado realizando a través de este proyecto. Nadine, si puedes pasar por favor a la siguiente. Gracias. Y bueno, como les comentaba, el trabajo del PMA, incluidas las simulaciones de activación realizadas para el FBF y la respuesta de emergencia a las inundaciones, ha demostrado que existe esa necesidad de reforzar las previsiones meteorológicas, la localización de las alertas a nivel municipal y el fortalecimiento de las capacidades locales para prepararse y responder ante las emergencias. Antes no eran tan habituales las inundaciones repentinas, pero esto ha ido aumentando debido al cambio climático y se han creado nuevos modelos de preparación. Entendemos que para que este programa sea integral, se necesita un mayor apoyo a nivel, o sea, no solamente a nivel nacional, sino también a nivel comunitario. Y de esta forma aumentar pues, las capacidades para pronosticar las lluvias con tiempo y precisión suficientes para tener esa alerta temprana y hacer una acción temprana a nivel comunitario. Además, las autoridades locales necesitan entender mejor estos pronósticos para ser más autónomos y poder tomar decisiones en cuanto a las evacuaciones y esa preparación previa que necesitan, ¿no? Es por esta razón por la que desde el PMA se ha creado el programa Cuencas Resilientes. La idea con esto es que no solamente trabajemos a nivel nacional con los servicios climáticos, sino también a nivel comunitario, acercarnos cada vez más a la comunidad. Bueno, y el objetivo general de este programa es contribuir a mejorar las capacidades de respuesta ante desastres y la resiliencia de las comunidades a los peligros relacionados con el clima. Mediante la mejora de estos servicios de información climática y los sistemas de alerta temprana. Sobre todo, bueno, ese sería el objetivo general y el objetivo del programa es la mejora de los servicios de información climática y la localización de acciones de alerta temprana y acciones basadas en la información climática. Y bueno, ¿cómo vamos a trabajar a nivel comunitario? Pues fortaleciendo la capacidad local en la materia de preparación ante desastres de una manera integral. Por lo tanto, vamos a estar reforzando la educación a nivel comunitario en materia de alerta temprana y de acción anticipada, tanto como también en los marcos institucionales locales. Los alcaldes y los responsables locales también deben de ser los líderes de estas acciones, Por lo tanto, también vamos a estar trabajando con ellos y bueno, sobre todo reenfocando en estas posibles acciones anticipadas basadas en pronósticos. Y bueno, también además del aumento de la formación, queremos trabajar en reforzar a las comunidades a través de equipamiento y la revisión de los procedimientos operativos a nivel local, tanto para el tema de evacuación y bueno, todas las evacuaciones que hay que hacer según las previsiones. Además del fortalecimiento de los comités de prevención, mitigación y respuesta, que ya hay creados a nivel comunitario, queremos conformar redes comunitarias que estarán compuestas por líderes y lideresas comunitarias y bueno, ellos serán capacitados para que puedan hacer sus propios análisis de vulnerabilidad y revisión de las capacidades de las comunidades y, como les mencionaba antes, también se les brindará equipos de intervención inmediata y podrán desarrollar sus sistemas de alerta temprana comunitarios, entre otras cosas. Para nosotros, o sea, desde el PMA en República Dominicana, creemos que las comunidades deben ser capacitadas para la utilización de la información climática, ya que esto les hace menos vulnerables ante futuros eventos, protegiendo a las familias, sus bienes y convirtiéndoles en personas más y en comunidades más resilientes en términos de seguridad alimentaria y medios de subsistencia. Y bueno, esta sería mi intervención. Me gustaría que, por favor, Nadine, pudieras poner por último el resumen del video, el resumen del proyecto que se ha estado desarrollando, el FBF, donde resume un poco este trabajo de acciones anticipadas y servicios climáticos que hemos venido realizando en la Cuenca Yaque del Norte. Gracias.
Súper, muchas gracias, Sara. ¿Todos pueden ver todavía mi pantalla con el video? Si es el caso, comienza el video. Sí, perfecto.
La República Dominicana es uno de los países más vulnerables por choques ante el cambio climático a nivel mundial.
Aquí nos inundamos por vía de la lluvia, como digo, pero principalmente porque el río se nos desborda del agua que viene de arriba.
Aquí dura el agua más de 15 días para salir del pueblo. Esa calle se nos pone a nosotros que parece un río.
Implementamos acciones anticipadas a través del proyecto Financiamiento Basado en Pronósticos.
Con el PMA siempre tenemos reuniones respecto a eso, principalmente en nuestra vida.
Estamos trabajando en modelar este tipo de acciones para demostrar sus efectos positivos e incorporarlos en la estrategia de protección social del país.
En el año 2022 realizamos acciones anticipadas basados en los pronósticos del huracán Fiona. Familias vulnerables recibieron mensajes de texto con alerta temprana e información. Además, recibieron transferencia de efectivo para prepararse antes del evento.
Compré medicina que no tenía y con lo que me quedaron compré comida y fui al médico.
Uno se pone contento porque le entró una ayuda que uno no la tenía.
Es sumamente importante trabajar de manera conjunta con las diferentes instituciones a nivel nacional, de tal manera que se pueda tener una respuesta en conjunto ante estos choques climáticos.
Es necesario continuar mapeando el riesgo para poder generar resiliencia en los hogares más vulnerables.
Yes, yeah, great. So I hope everyone could follow this video. I think it gives a very nice overview on what the team in Dominican Republic is doing. Tara, thanks a lot for your presentation. Very interesting, and also, yeah, very nice to see how in different offices we work with the communities, because we all identify this to be the most crucial work. So now I would like to invite my colleague Jorge to speak. Dear tech team, did you already enable his microphone? Or do I need to do that? Just let me know. Before I go, but sorry, I see there's a question from Sarde. Sarde, I can unmute. I think you can unmute yourself if you would like to ask that question. If it's related to Tara's presentation, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. It was an excellent session. So far, I understand that the climate service is for the local community, but I have some small question and some suggestion also. Some question is the sustainability of the innovative program. You know that you have mentioned that there are over 5 billion people in the world already have the access, but the world has a huge population and different in many countries. How that these innovative actions can be sustained for a long time and replicate worldwide.
Okay, thanks a lot. Krishna, would you like to come in first to give kind of a regional perspective, and then Tara maybe want to give an input on the very specific project?
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Nadine. Look, Sardar, I think it's of course always a challenge. Sustainability is key. And what we have seen, one of the lessons learned from around the world is that by engaging with communities, that's how you achieve sustainability. So in the case of Guatemala, for example, which Jorge is going to present, we're already working with the National Meteorological Agency to develop bulletins that are tailored to a very specific need. And this is already becoming part of the regular work, because we've seen that this is a need for several users. And in that sense, there's no additional cost. It's something that will be automated and it will be kind of just mainstreamed into the work of the National Met Agency. So in that sense, that's one way to achieve sustainability. I think in the case of Colombia, it's very similar, where we're injecting that initial investment to document a lot of this information that hasn't been documented before, the bioindicators and so on. But ultimately, it's the communities who will be managing the platforms and the systems that enable them to use this information. And maybe just to add that, with climate information, we live in an unprecedented era with open access to satellite information, real-time climate data that enables us to basically just spit out information in an easy-to-use dashboard. So if we can leverage some of that as well and make sure that it is tailored, then that's another way of ensuring sustainability, because it's relatively low cost once that initial investment is made. So those would be some initial observations.
Thank you. I think I can provide you some ideas. The climate change impact will be in future more and more. But those who are children now, those are the students now, if they learn these things and then in their curriculum or in their education institute, they can continue for their life. And if this practice continue over the years in educational institute, particularly the primary and secondary level students, they learn and they can continue. I think that can be also another way to make the sustainability of this innovative idea. I don't know. You can give some idea from your opinion.
No, thank you. Thank you very much for that recommendation. And no, indeed, we are working with universities. We haven't formalized a curriculum yet, but yeah, it's something that we've been talking about. So no, but let's have a chat bilaterally to see if you have any experiences on developing curricula for this kind of products. That would be really helpful.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. Not sure, Tara, would you like to give just one particular example on the Dominican Republic, and then afterwards we come to Guatemala, and afterwards we can have a more holistic discussions. Sarda, pardon.
Just a minute, Nadine, may I come in?
Yes,
So Nadine, you were telling me about the entrance of George. So is he George Barrientos?
Yes, but I already figured out. I think he should be now able to speak.
Okay.
But yeah, it's Jorge. Yeah,
Yes,
it's
I'm able to
Barrientos.
speak.
Okay, I'm so
Perfect.
sorry. I didn't notice your message. That's
No,
why.
no worries. No
Okay,
worries.
okay. Yeah, George, please carry on. George?
So
Thank
yeah,
you.
so maybe Tara, would you like to add something? Otherwise, we regard to sustainability. Otherwise, we
Sí.
go to. Mhm.
Sí, bueno, realmente el trabajo que nosotros hemos estado realizando es a nivel nacional, apoyando ya a los organismos estatales que existen. Les hemos estado acompañando, además de a través de las capacitaciones técnicas, brindándoles equipos hidrometeorológicos que puedan servir para estas mediciones. Y entiendo que el tema de la sostenibilidad a veces pues, podemos quizás como ponerlo en duda, pero si trabajamos a nivel comunitario se hace una conciencia directa a nivel de la comunidad y la comunidad entiende que esto es primordial para poder salvaguardar sus vidas o parte de esta estrategia para salvar sus vidas. Ellos mismos ayudan a ese cuidado de los equipos y esto ayuda a esta sostenibilidad que es necesaria, ¿no? Haciendo ese trabajo de manera integral, no solamente con los organismos estatales, sino con la misma conciencia a través de las mismas comunidades, a través de estos líderes y lideresas.
Perfect, Tara. Thanks so much. That was, I think, very enriching to hear from the example from Dominican Republic. So now let's continue with Guatemala. Jorge, there you are. Finally, it's your time. And then we can have Q&A afterwards with some additional questions. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Nadine. And once again, sorry, because, well, I just want to introduce quickly myself. My name is Jorge Barrientos, and I work for WFP Guatemala country office, but also I work with the RVP, with the Regional Peru and Panama office, with climate services, with my colleague Krishna and Nadine. And today, so I've been hearing all the points that we have been discussing in terms of climate services and the importance. I don't want to like.
Okay, I think he lost connection totally. Okay, I think now he's connecting again. Let's wait a few more seconds, and otherwise maybe Krishna, I ask you to take over if you and we improvise a bit.
Sure, if you want, in the interest of
okay, he just let me know he's in there, but he can't talk now.
Okay.
Jorge.
Nadine, just a minute. Are you hearing me, Nadine?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay,
and I think Jorge should be able to speak now again.
Yeah, thank you. I apologize.
Sorry, but Shamarita,
Yeah.
what? Sorry.
Yes, I just asking you whether whether those presentations which need interpretations are complete.
Yes, the interpretations are complete. Thanks a lot. We will now carry on in English.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect.
Okay, sorry about that, but I just had technical issues just pull me out of the call. So once again, nice to meet you all, and I've been hearing all the points that we have been discussing about climate services. I don't want to like go again into the importance because we have been discussing those points of the importance of having a climate services ecosystem implemented in the countries that we're working with. So I want to focus more in what we have been doing in Guatemala and also the community access and contact that we have been doing. So Nadine, could you please go to the next slide? Thank you. Okay, so first of all, we have been working in this local climate agencies. Well, we have been focusing ourselves as a disaster response unit, which is operating under Resilient in Guatemala. We created this climate services unit. And the main reason for it was to attend and support what we currently have in the country, which is called MTAs, and is the Agri-Climatic Discussion Table. So this it's not institution because it's not they don't have any funds from the government, but it's an organization that is organized per department or per state, and it includes a lot of actors that are working within each location to produce and to interpret climate data. So we identified that the importance of working with them and also supporting them, but also enhancing the capacities of the MTAs, of the MTAs, to produce more relevant data. Therefore, we started to create this analysis of what are the climate services needs within the country, focusing first on these MTAs, because the MTAs has the access for each community. And we wanted to go all the way down to whether we can capture a lot of data. And that's one of the things that always happens with these climate services proposals, is that we start to produce a lot of data, but then again, we have a bunch of data, we could analyze the data, but we don't go down to the level at a community level. We do not produce relevant information to make changes. So that was the main focus of, okay, let's build these climate services. And also we wanted to start a training process for community leaders. And that's where we created a project that is called Chajinel, which is the word in Mayan. And that means is a climate, it's a Chajinel climate, it's a climate ambassador, if you want to say that like that. So what does that mean is we identify community leaders and we train them in how to capture and interpret climate data. And they will work along with the MTA. That means that that's a network of people that we activate whether a climate event is happening. And they go and monitor the climate events with tools that we provide them. And they produce that data. They share that data with us. We share that data with the local climate agency. And then the local climate agency produce and enhance the data so we can go down to the MTA and then we can produce relevant actions to it. So in that sense, we identified that there was a need of hardware, meaning there's a lot of positions or locations that were lacking of hardware and how to capture that data. And that's where we started. It's like, okay, and just going into one of the questions that we had before is, how do you make it sustainable? And that's one of the questions that we had when we were creating this project, is how do we make climate service sustainable? Like, WFP is not going to install a lot of tools within years and spending millions of dollars installing climate data tools. So we started into working with these MTAs, but also working along with the local national climate agency. So we enhanced that relationship with them. We started to create capacities within that agency and started like, okay, what are the needs in terms of hardware? We can invest in the first hardware batch, like the first section of hardware that we can focus in one location and pilot if it works okay. And then along with the government, we can work in an overall plan, and it's a national plan, to enhance that and also bring out different donors and organizations like NGOs that are working with these locations to enhance that data collection process. So first of all, we started with 250 rain gauges, and we trained 75 different communities in how to install them, how to read them. We established a protocol of how to capture rain data. And that protocol was established as well with CGIAR, which is one of the organizations that is doing research on climate information. So we created all this protocol. We built all these agendas that each of the community leader has. They install their own rain gauge. We told them, okay, everyone has to go at 8 a.m. and capture all the rain data. Make sure that there's no like debris into the rain gauge and make sure it's clean, etc. And without that protocol, we train them. But we also not only train them on the rain gauge, but train them on the importance of interpreted climate data. How important is of the climate data to have it and will impact their own production systems. Then we went ahead like, okay, so we have the 250 rain gauges, but then again, it's manual information. So we had some gaps. And along with CGIAR, we did an analysis of 1 year data analysis to determine what was the quality of the data captured. And we found out that our quality is in between 78 and 82%. So we still have a gap on non-quality data. And we were analyzing how much, like for example, the frequency of the data produced, the quality of the data. We were comparing all these rain gauges readings between all the satellite information that we have, but also interpolating the data with the climate agency and what information they had in terms of rain. So we found out the necessity of also having automated tools. That means we need to be not dependent on a human being, but also it has to be automated, and we have to have like immediate access. Then we went ahead and we installed 50. Well, that's one of the projects that we have for this year, to install a total of 50 agroclimatic sensors that are automated. So they use a SIM and they produce data and they send it via SIM to a platform, and that platform is producing a lot of climate data points. And that climate data point is being analyzed by the local climate agency, but also is being shared with the MFAF. So we can start analyzing and determine what's going on at a field level. So the main goal is to contribute to the National Climate Data Hub, because what we did is, okay, besides the National Climate Agency, what else could we move to make it that sustainable? What are the programs in terms of climate or weather data that we could include for? And we found out that there was a proposal of a National Climate Data Hub at CGIAR, and it was they had participants in the government, they had a private sector, they have public sector, or they also have the humanitarian sector working on it. And the main goal is to create this hub, whether they are capturing data from different sources, but they're like analyzing that data and creating protocols that will have one single data stream. So that's the main project that we're working with. Could we go to the next slide, please? So what's the workflow? First of all, we're focusing into improving the climate services data capturing through the incorporation of complementary devices at the field level. So we're continuing with the agroclimatic sensors, we're continuing with the rain gauges, we're continuing with the trainings. We develop a training method for climate data information, but also we're continuing to enhance the MTA local capacity. It's how do they read all this information? How do we produce a bulletin, a relevant bulletin that it's like an information system within one feed with colors, with figures, that tells what are the main recommendations that you need to do. But this bulletin is being fed by all of this climate data. We need to enable the access to shared platforms, and that's what we thought at the first point. It's like, okay, we were starting to capturing data, but this data has to be shared with a lot of different actors. It's not only for WFP. We could analyze that data, and WFP has the capacity of creating as well other recommendations. But we are not at all of the field locations. We have a limit of interventions in terms of the places that we are working with. So how do we enhance this as a national scheme? So that's what we thought. Okay, we needed to make public this data producing shared platform, so we can include other actors, and that's where we find this climate data hub. But also we're including other actors to participate in this data interpretation and readings. Also, we need to do a historic analysis model to create a solid foundation of the analysis. That means, okay, we're producing this year new data, but what's in the history? What's the historical analysis data? How's the climate data in the history has been behaving in different locations? We need to make sure that the data we're capturing is quality data, but also it's related to the events that we're foreseeing. We also created an information analysis and distribution capacities for the MTAs, as I told you, it's like the creation capacities for them, and generating effective distribution channels. That this is an important point. We are focusing on all of our efforts, including a strong SBCC, a social behavioral change for climate. That means that this bulletin, this information system as a bulletin has to make a change, has to have the capacity of making a change in the behavior of all of our farmers, smallholder farmers, but also beneficiaries. So that's a huge challenge, because then you have, once again, a lot of data to produce, but how do you end up to produce a relevant bulletin that we can monitor as well, that they're actually implementing those changes. So this SBCC component is a transversal. It goes all over the implementation of climate and resilience that we have. And that means that we need to be very focused on that part to keep on going with a social behavioral change focus on all the implementations we do. Could we go to the next one, please? Okay, so this is just a small workflow on how the climate community monitors work. So what we call check-in-ins. So first of all, check-in-L was created to support the anticipatory actions pilot that has been implemented this year. So in the country of Dominican Republic, that they have years implemented anticipatory actions. Guatemala just begun the designing process 2 years ago. And this is the year we're piloting our proposal for anticipatory actions. The anticipatory actions model that we're working with is for drought. So we're anticipating heavy droughts or extended dry spells. So there's a lot of implementation and actions that we have in place, but we're mostly relying ourselves in a 6 months forecast that it's keep updating every month. So during 6 months, we have an update forecast each month, and then we sit down as a committee and take decisions over the predefined actions to be implemented at field level. But we found the necessity of having someone at the field that has that community leverage, that has the community leadership. And that's where we created, okay, we need to have monitors. So these monitors are part of these actions being implemented, and they will have a relevant tool to capture the data, but also they will have the necessary training to transfer that information to the community. Is how are they're becoming this type of leaders, but they're also spreading that information to the communities. It's how the communities are adopting them as one of the focal points, and also the MTAs will work as well with them. So the MTAs will rely on them as well to transfer all this information and transfer all the recommendations for all the bulletins that we have. So that's a bit of the description of climate data, garden data flow that they do. So they capture data, they upload it into a platform. That platform will be sharing a cloud service, and that cloud service is accessed by INSI, which is a local climate agency, CGIR, which is the organization that I told you, and MAGA, which is the Ministry of Agriculture. And then that ends up into actions. Is how is this data feel? And at the right, you can see first we're managing. This sensor is being installed as well in Zimbabwe. So we look into what will be a relevant sensor, easy to manage, not that expensive, easy to maintain as well. And we found out that Zimbabwe won an innovation challenge, and they were installing this network. We analyzed all the benefits, the pros and cons of it, and we found out a really good sensor. So we took that example from the office in Zimbabwe and started implementing Guatemala. So far, we're going to be implementing 50 sensors in 4 different departments. And this sensor is not a weather station. I just want to make that clear. It's close to a weather station, but it has more info in terms of agroclimatic data, in terms of it analyzes NDVI, it analyzes a lot of variables that the normal weather station wouldn't, and also it's cheaper because a really good weather station will be almost $5,000 or $10,000 to install. Next, please. Okay, so this is one of the main points that I want to focus is all of these efforts has to be coordinated with the local governments, with the local institutions. And that has been one of the big challenges for us is how do we integrate Ministry of Agriculture? How do we integrate the Ministry of Natural Resources? How do we integrate the climate agency? It's not only just creating a climate data network, but how do we work with them? How can they be empowered and also be participating on it? So we have been doing workshops in them. We have been training them into the different tools that we've been investing with, but also focus a really, well, give it a really good focus into SBCC, is all of the information that you are producing has to have this social behavioral change analysis and focus. Because things are done in the field, then it's not worth it. So that coordination along with other agencies has been clue and key factor of all the implementation that we have been doing for this network. So, and also we identified the capacities that we needed to create as well for the climate agency. And then we're like, okay, we have a necessity of hardware in terms of a couple of computers, a really good computer to analyze data, to analyze satellite data, to produce all relevant information. But also we are looking out for training. So those WFP has training into national climate agencies or sources that we can provide them. So we have been sitting down with them and try to identify these necessities. But also when we were designing the forecast for anticipatory actions, we were investing into a platform that they have, so we can continue and make it sustainable, because then they won't rely on a platform that is owned by WFP, but they will rely on their own platform. And what we did is we create that capacity on their own platform, so we can go and move on into the triggers and then the analysis of anticipatory actions, but also the bulletins that will be generated. So yeah, that has been one of the points and the key aspects of this climate services component. Next, please. And that will be my
I think it was your last one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me check, but I think there was no other. No,
That was the last one. I wanted to end it up in that key factor of integrating all these local actors into it.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot, Jorge. As always, a pleasure to hear your presentations. They're super interesting to hear that this complex work that the Office of Guatemala is doing and engaging different actors, different technologies. It's great. So wrapping up, I see we have now some few minutes left for some questions. So maybe first of all, I see that Sarah also added another question. Apart from the sustainability, he was interested in what age group has access to climate information services. Not sure, Sarah, if you want to add to which country office you refer, or you refer to the general work. So if you want to come in and add to that question.
Thank you. I am Sardar Shafiqul Alam, work at International Center for Climate Change and Development based in Dhaka, Bangladesh. And my question you already mentioned that what age group have access the climate information services. And my understanding is that if the children have the access, and they can continue for the long time.
Jorge, do you want to come in and explain a bit maybe the distribution of participants, what age they have, and how far maybe adolescents who are already involved in agriculture are also included?
Yes, sure. And that's a really good question. For example, for the climate monitors, we have a really strong gender focus. So 80% of them, in total, we have 25 monitors, and 21 of them are women. So we identify women that are leaderships into that part. So that's one of the main gender focus that we have. But also the age is important, because we found out that there's a lot of youth just moving into migrating internal migration, because they don't find the farming practices interesting. They want to be more involved in the technology, the training, to learning more things that just normally do the current or the ancient farming practices. So we have been having a lot of interest from youth, and that means people from 18 to 25 years old that are really interested into managing these tools, interpreting this climate data, sitting down with their communities and tell them like what is important and what's not. But one of the important points is you need to have an elder. That means maybe it's not a 70-year-old person, but it has to be someone that is in between 40 and 50 that has that strong leadership in the community. So what we try to do is a mix. Is youth people, so it's easy to work with them in the training process, and they can transfer all that information. Gender focused, because we want to empower women into that information. But we included two persons that are elders in terms of they have a community leadership role, and they're in between their 40s and 50s. They're a little bit hard to train, but once again, then the youth is pushing that training process. So the youth explain to them, and they're like, no, this is how it works. This is an important part of it. And that's how we are distributing our age part. Now, for the bulletins go to the general farming public. But once again, people in between 25 years old and 40 years old are the ones that are using the bulletin to inform themselves into the actions they need to implement at the field. And that's one of the information that Insigume and the MTS shared with us. So what we're trying to do is creating that bulletin based on that age segment. How can we ease that process? Maybe it's not a cartoon, maybe it's something more formal, or maybe it's something hybrid. Yeah, I hope I answered your question. Over.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Are there other questions from the audience? I've seen the number of participants reduced a bit. I guess it's also due to the time that it's already late in some parts of the world. Otherwise, if there are no questions, I would be interested maybe to hear from those who are still connected. Since one important point for our presentation was that the climate services needs to be adapted to communities on the ground. If someone of the participants would like to share their view on this and how they are working on climate services within their country, within their region, and how they ensure this that information is tailored. So would be very interested to hear from you if you would like to share on this topic with us.
Can I ask another question?
Yes, of course.
I think all the colleagues, they shared their learning. What their challenges they face, and how did they overcome those challenges? It would be good to learn from them.
Okay, sure. That's a good question. Colleagues who would like to come in on this question, which challenges you faced and how you came up with how you came up with solutions. I'm also happy to translate to Spanish or English if that's helpful. So colleagues can also speak in Spanish. So whoever, Jorge, Tara, or Javier would like to speak on the challenges they encountered, happy to support.
Well, I can go quickly. I apologize that I will need to leave, but and this mandatory training that I need to attend. But yes, one of the big challenges that we face is the coordination with the government. So it's not easy. Because then again, they can feel that, for example, the climate agency could feel that we are entering into their own space, and it's not. We're just creating capacities and enhancing capacities. So that coordination point of let them know, like, we're not building ourselves or trying to be a climate weather data and then competing with them, but we want to implement the right network based on their own requirements, or maybe not like the specific requirements, because they were asking for stations that were worth like $15,000 each. So we're like, no, well, that's not within a sustainable point for the funds, but what else could we do? So we found out this information, X, Y, and Z. Could this work for you? And they were like, okay, but we will need some like 5 different hardware to test them. So that coordination part of let them know that we're not competing with them, but we're supporting them, was one of the big challenges. And that was with the climate agency, but also with the MTAs, with the agroclimatic discussion tables, because they thought that we wanted to take over them, and WFP wanted to lead the agroclimatic information in climate services, and once again wasn't. So we sat down with them and explained that is not our goal, but we identified, and we know that it's important for us to have a climate services network if we want to support the other activities and implementations we're doing. So that's towards public and institutions, but also internally, it's a challenge, because internally they might ask you from WFP colleagues is, what are you trying to do? This is not the mandate for WFP, or we are not becoming climate experts or services. And that's one of the big challenges as well, is trying to, because we are integrated within resilience activities. So it's like, okay, try to show all the activity managers the importance and the quality of data that they could produce, and they could also monitor their own projects with this network, and also working a lot with the MTAs and have this resilience midterm, long-term process. So yeah, I will put those main challenges, like external into institutions and internal into your own activities, to how to sell this process of having a climate services network. And but that, I would apologize, but I really need to leave this call, and I'm really sorry, but I'm really thankful as well to giving me this opportunity to present our point.
Thanks a lot for taking the time. Take care, and we talk to each other soon. Y bueno, and maybe Javier can add from the Colombia side. He will speak in Spanish, but then I could translate, and then we can afterwards close the session. Just one quick input from Javier.
Just a minute.
Bueno.
Just a minute, Nadine. Javier,
Yeah.
just a minute. So as soon as the program is end, don't leave the platform. And I would like to request all of you, just at the end of the session, please all of you on your camera so that I can take a screenshot. It will take as a comms serving purpose in our
perfect.
Yeah, in our organization. So
yeah,
we can do it now. So please, the attendees and also the panelists who are now in the online, kindly on your camera so that I can take a screenshot. Please, Minichi. Just a minute. Nadine, can you share? You are sharing your screen. Can you off the screen?
Yes. Like this?
Yeah. So, Shodder sir, are you here?
I am here, but I cannot.
Yes.
Okay. So I am taking the screenshot, okay?
Mm-hmm.
1, 2, 3. Yes.
Thank you.
Perfect. So if Javier wants to add something to the question of problems, but then to answer Sara's question, and then we kindly close the session because we're running over time.
Bueno, básicamente era como para poder cerrar digamos, nuestra intervención como panelistas de cambio climático, es que todas las herramientas que estemos construyendo básicamente nos servirán para todas las comunidades que son étnicas y que nos van a servir para tomar decisiones. Pues esperamos que en los próximos meses y en los próximos años sigamos construyendo resiliencia en nuestras comunidades. Estoy muy contento de haber participado en este panel y queda pues mucho por discutir con respecto, digamos, al cubrimiento o cómo podemos cubrir a nuestras demás comunidades cuando los temas de riesgos climáticos, cambios climáticos vienen un poco más complejos y estas comunidades y las poblaciones no tienen la manera de cómo enfrentar esta crisis climática que se va a relacionar mucho con el tema de seguridad alimentaria. Gracias.
Thanks a lot, Javier. So just to summarize, he's mentioning that the instruments the team was working on serve especially for indigenous communities who have a special background, a special sometimes a different understanding, and this is maybe one solution they found is to adapt their instruments very well to this background and to this context. And he's looking forward to engage more in this topic, was very happy to participate in this session, and is also interested in engaging more, since the communities that are affected by climate change, these indigenous communities often don't have any means to respond to these changes. So thanks a lot, Javier. Thanks a lot, Tara. Krishna and Jorge unfortunately already had to leave the session due to other commitments. I thank everyone for participating, for engaging, especially Sarda, who was very interested. So thanks a lot. I'm thanking Sharita and Sara, who supported all the way in organizing this session. And of course, a big thank you to the International Center for Climate Change and Development and the Independent University of Bangladesh for making this conference happen. So we were happy to participate. Hope to see you soon in some other engagements. And yeah, greetings from Panama, greetings from Latin America. See you soon. Thanks. Bye.
Yes, thank you to all of you for engaging in this program and make the program more lucrative. The organization like WFP, obviously their presence make this program more informative. And the presentation was very thoughtful. Thank you.